The PROTON Saga is Malaysia's longest running model, with the initial Saga being introduced with the launch of PROTON back in the late 80s. Updated for 2022, the Saga now gains some very important convenience features in order to keep it up to date with other A-segment saloon competitors. But for the money, we have to ask one question. Does the Saga still retain its props as a value buy? Well, we're here to find out. My name is ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring, this is our review of the 2022 PROTON Saga Premium S. Now with the 2022 update, the changes are relatively minor. What you get across the range is the new round Thundercats badge, which replaces the old and proud Proton Shield logo. Now personally, I find that the round badge doesn't quite sit in the grille as nicely because it just seems like this grille was designed for the Shield, don't you think? Now because it's the Premium S model, we get a body kit on this, although the Premium model does also get this red line underneath the grille. So this is the ethereal bow, whatever, and you get LED daytime running lights. Now compared to the Produa Bezza, the PROTON Saga only gets halogen headlights, which are also not automatic, whereas the Bezza gets LED headlights as standard across the range. Now this is worth noting because the Saga FLX was known for having some of the brightest halogen headlights and the brightest halogen fog lights, which has since disappeared on later models. So while not having LED might not be the biggest deal, the fact that these are notably darker than what you get from Produa is worth bearing in mind. Now down the side of the Saga we get the same profile that we've had for years now, which includes this rather gently tapering roofline towards a very pert rear end. Now because this is the Premium S model, although this is shared with the Premium, we get 15-inch alloy wheels in this interesting dual tone design. So it looks like a 4-spoke alloy wheel, which I think is quite interesting. Though that said, only the Premium S gets these black wing mirrors if I'm not mistaken. The Premium S is also the only Saga in the lineup to get keyless entry and go, but the button is only on the driver's side, which is nice to have, although it would have been better had there been a button on this side as well. But I am nitpicking. And of course, from the rear you can tell that the Saga is a rather long car, which means rear seat space is pretty good, although we'll show you that in a little bit. And because it's the Premium S, you also get a side skirt, which is nice. Now at the back of the Saga, you get bulb combination tail lights. For the Premium S, you get this black garnish for the Proton script that goes across the boot. And for the Premium S, again, you also get a rear boot release. This is unique to this car, and as you can see, it's quite excited to open. Now once it is open and done flapping about, you will see that there is a decent amount of space in here. Now the rear seats can be folded down for added space, but this is one of these Saga's party pieces where, compared to hatchback models like the Produa Axia and Produa Myvi, this offers a lot more cargo room than those cars. So it's more suited to those with growing families and growing needs. Also, you get a little spoiler, which I think finishes off the rear end quite nicely. Now inside the Saga, the revisions are again minor, but they improve quality of life. So for starters, this head unit has now been revised with a new interface, which is now a lot easier to use, although it still doesn't come with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. The air conditioning controls have also been revised, where they used to be twist type knobs. Now you get two different twist type knobs, and they integrate all the buttons all in here. There's also a row of buttons that handle your central locking and the rear demister and stuff like that. Underneath you get a USB-A port and a 12-volt socket where I've already put my charger, and there's actually a decent amount of space here where I can put my phone while it's charging here. I can actually put my wallet down here in the center console, and there's a couple of rather small cup holders up here. You also get a decent amount of space back here and another space back here for things where I've put the 12-volt socket plug. And you get USB-A ports back here as well to ensure that all passengers can have their devices charged up. Now, because it's a premium S model, you get this leatherette and fabric combination upholstery, which initially may not sound particularly nice, but the upholstery itself is very high quality, and I've no doubt that these will last quite long. And that's important for Saga buyers because a lot of people like to use their cars for a long time. You also get this red garnish around the aircon vents as well as around the dials, which is interesting. You also get some more red here on the steering wheel, and you get a leather wrapped steering wheel in this premium S model. And I have to say that this does feel rather nice to hold, and it's nice and chunky, unlike what you get from Pro Duo. One of the other things that they've changed to this car, which I think not a lot of people will notice, is the indicator stalk, or the indicator system in this car, where previously it used to have a rather unsatisfying motion. These now feel much higher quality than before, and most importantly, you now get a one-touch indicator function, where when you just press it lightly, it will blink 5 times. I have been asking for this feature in more affordable vehicles for years, so I'm very glad that this is now finally here. You also get the push start button down here, if that's of any importance. Now, in the back of the Saga, you can see again there is a lot of room. With this seat set up in my driving position, and I'm about 160 to 165 centimeters, I can't remember, I do have a good amount of knee room, and I can tuck my feet in underneath the seat in front. That is particularly important because, as you can tell, the seat bases on this car sit quite low. So if I put my feet up, or rather backwards like this, there isn't a lot of under thigh support, so I do need to stretch out to get comfortable. As I said earlier, there are a couple of USB-A ports back here, accessible from the rear. You don't get rear aircon vents, but then you don't get that in the Bezza either. And in terms of rear accoutrements, it's not too bad. You have a cup or bottle holder rather down here in the doors, but you don't get a center armrest. Not really that big of a deal. You get some space here, you get some oh my god handles, and it's alright, I guess. Now, a special note for Grab drivers, because ultimately a lot of you will be looking at a Proton Saga, you would certainly want to get the Premium S model with this leatherette, because these can be wiped down rather easily, although the fabric not so much. But for families, you will be able to enjoy ISOFIX mount on either side with a rear tether up here on the parcel shelf, which makes installing a car seat rather easy, aided by the very large opening rear doors. However, regardless if you're an e-hailing driver or if you're a family person looking at one of these, or indeed somebody looking for their first car, what all three of you have in common is you'll be driving it. So it's best to get back into the driver's seat to tell you more about that. Now, driving the Proton Saga means you have to interact with the powertrain. So under the bonnet is a 1.3 litre VVT petrol engine producing 95 PS and 120 Newton meters of torque. Now, in the standard model, that goes through a 5-speed manual gearbox, but in every other model it goes through a 4-speed automatic gearbox with power going to the front wheels naturally. Now, the thing about this powertrain is that when Proton updated the Saga to use the 480, it was replacing the much maligned Punch CVT automatic. And so by moving to this 4-speed auto, life in the Saga has become a lot more refined, a lot more comfortable, and a lot more quiet. And as a result, it makes this a much more pleasant car to drive. It also means that this powertrain is now a lot more efficient, because the Punch CVT used to waste a lot of energy because it wasn't a particularly efficient gearbox. Now, Proton claims a fuel consumption figure of about 5.5 something litres per 100 kilometers. Now, realistically, you're not going to get that, because obviously these data claims are normally put together in some lab somewhere, and they're not really representative of the real world. Although, in our testing, this car has managed to return between 5.8 to 6.1 litres per 100 kilometers, which is still a very respectable figure for a car like this. And then there's the fact that this car is quite well put together. So even though this car has about 6,000 kilometers on the clock, none of which were kind, I suppose, there's no squeaks or rattles in here. The only ones that you hear are just my stuff moving about the place. And that to me tells me that this is a car that, you know, being Proton's best seller, its volume seller at that, Proton has put a lot of thought into making sure that this car puts its best foot forward. Even things like the sound of the doors locking and unlocking sound a lot higher quality than they used to. The sound of the indicators, for example, sound a lot more high quality than they used to. Even the motion of turning the lights on and off feel a lot higher quality than it used to. And so it makes you feel like even though you've gotten into what is ultimately an entry-level car, it doesn't feel that entry-level. The side is only really let down when you switch the lights on and you get halogen lights instead of LEDs, since LEDs are now becoming a lot more common. And of course, the lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is also an issue. But that said, the audio system in this car is actually not that bad. Sure, it's only 4 speakers, and yes, they are positioned around your ankles, but it's not really that bad for something like this, which costs about 45,000 ringgit. And that's sort of the thing about this car. You have to take all of these things into consideration. Could it be more quiet? Sure. Could it be more refined? Sure. Could it be more punchy? Could it have a better gearbox, etc., etc.? It could have all of these things, yes, and it could be better in all of these ways, but ultimately you're talking about a car that starts under 35,000 ringgit and tops out at under 45,000 ringgit. The Saga is a really important car for first-time car buyers, and to be able to offer this degree of fit and finish is very impressive for the price. Even though, in terms of safety, this car lags behind the PROTON Saga, which offers Advanced Safety Assist 2.0. Whereas in the Saga, you only get things like traction control, even then on the top spec model only, as well as, you know, your usual ABS, EBD, and that sort of thing. So yes, it's not the safest A-segment saloon that money can buy, but that doesn't necessarily make it the worst. And with adjustable things and with the things that you touch and feel on a day-to-day basis and the way this car interacts with you on a day-to-day basis, the Saga is a very likable car. If I only had 50,000 ringgit to spend, for example, on a car, the Saga is certainly something that I'd consider. And I can say with confidence in the past that I have recommended the Saga to friends of mine who have asked about, you know, a good entry-level car. Because that's ultimately what it is. It is a good entry-level car. And as a result, there really isn't much for you to fault with it. Of course, if I wanted to be really finicky, I could suggest that these new aircon controls are not quite as high quality as I'd expect them to be, particularly when compared to the same knobs and the same switchgear that you get in the Persona and the Iris. And the screen is perhaps very small. Although it's 7 inches and it is a touchscreen, the bezels are enormous and the screen itself sits a little bit further back from sort of the front part, the bit that you touch, and you can notice that gap a little bit, so it does feel a little bit low rent. But aside from that, it's fine. I could see myself living with something like this if need be, and I wouldn't have any issue with it. This is a genuinely good car. And when was the last time you could say that about an entry-level Proton? So this is a commendable effort, and I certainly look forward to seeing Proton continue to make these small refinements and small changes, not only to the Saga but to the rest of its lineup, in order to get everything sort of competing within the same space. Especially since the Saga is now being exported to other markets, so we certainly wouldn't want to embarrass ourselves, would we? In any case, that's been our review of the 2022 PROTON Saga Premium S. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to be notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, jangan bodoh.